What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all well, and welcome back to Dragon Age Origins. So real fast, before we hop into this episode, I said that I was going to look up how we would have opened those chests that we left in the tower. The requirements for those three chests we missed are absurd. So, not only would we have needed 30 cunning minimum to open that chest, we would have also needed to get our lockpicking all the way up to level 4, which means unless you come here at level 12, you are not opening those chests. That is insane. So, I mean, what level are we right now? Um, is there even a way to check? Yeah, level 9. We are level 9. We are 3 levels short. So you would have to do the mage circle tower very late to come here at level 12 to be able to open that. Or you just have to pump the shit out of your cunning to be like, what, 50, 60, 40, something like that? Because each time you get one of these, it just adds a multiplier to your cunning, so the fact that you need the device mastery is crazy to me. Anyways, onward to the rest of this episode. What we are going to be doing this episode, since we did complete a major hub with the circle tower, we're actually going to head back to camp and get some conversations in, take advantage of this little lull in between. You see, now we completed the main hub. The blight has spread through the lands, and Lothering is lost. A small town just off the Imperial Highway at the edge of the hinterlands, destroyed by Darkspawn. Lothering is now gone. Is wiped off the map, and everything there is wiped off the map, which means at this point in the Dragon Age timeline, Falk and his family are now currently fleeing through the hinterlands. I believe they went through the hinterlands. Or it's hinterlands or southern hills. They went through one of these, and that's where they run into Flemeth. So, now that we're done with all of this, let's head back to camp. Another thing I do want to do once we get back...
Blight. How will you end it?
Here's Sten. We have to fight the Archdemon.
Is that all? It is surrounded by an ocean of Darkspawn. How will you reach it? If you reach it, how will you slay it? You say you are a Grey Warden. I have heard stories of this order.
What does this have to do with anything?
Great strategists and peerless warriors. That is what we hear of the Wardens. So far, I am not impressed.
I'm not here to impress you.
Evidently not. It remains only to see what you are here for.
You see, he approves that because I told him. Basically, he's happy there that I told him to shove it up his ass. If you had said you were new to the Wardens or you think you could do better and being petty, he wouldn't have respected that. Sten respects courage, authority. So, of course, telling him to back off and we got this, he respects that. As I was saying before he interrupted me, is we have an abundance of gifts that are taking up inventory spots that are really not cutting the cake for me. This is taking up so much space. So what we're going to do this episode, we're going to throw out some of these. So we're going to give Morrigan the silver chain.
I am grateful.
That's going to be a plus 10 for her. You do have to be cautious when you give out these buffs. If you go too far without talking to them, it is going to break something. So we're going to be very careful. I mean, Leliana, right? Surely she loved the symbol of Andraste.
That's a
Indeed, plus 10.
thought.
I don't want to give them all too much. You're a Canary. I don't know what you like, but everybody likes gold.
Unexpected. Thank you.
Indeed. Alistair, Wynne, do we have anything you would like? Maybe you would like a white rune stone? A small flat white stone with a gold rune carved into it. Maybe she would like that. Is there anything else that we can perhaps give? Give her a silver bracelet or a tribal necklace. She seems like she might like silver.
Oh, marvelous.
Indeed. Alistair, what do we have for you? What would you like, Alistair? We're saving the alcohol for a certain thirsty companion we'll be getting later. I guess we can give Alistair the, do you want a tribal necklace? No, we gotta save the jewelry for the women, right? Let's give him a small carved statue.
I could get used to this, you know.
Indeed, we guessed right. If it's for that specific companion, you will get a plus 10. If it's for anybody in general, you'll get a plus 5, so... We made a lot of good choices there. We got Alistair's minor constitution, because we gave him so much approval. Right, now we're just gonna make a big old loop around the camp. Who do we start with? We could start with Alistair.
What do you need?
I'd like to ask you something.
Ask away.
What can a Templar do, exactly?
Essentially, they're trained to fight. The Chantry would tell you that the Templars exist simply to defend. But don't let them fool you. They're an army. The other main purpose for a Templar is, of course, to hunt mages. To that end, we train in talents that drain mana and disrupt spells.
Well, we just saw the Templars in action, so this is rather topical. So Templars use magic themselves?
You could call it that, sure. The Chantry doesn't look on it the same way, however, since really our talents only work on mages. Against a regular person, I'm just a guy in a metal suit.
Delirium does give you magical power, though, or rather, magic nullifying power. Have you hunted any mages?
No, I never actually became a full Templar. Duncan recruited me before I took my vows. I was only present during one harrowing. The ritual that they test the mages with. It's not unlike our joining, really. And just as deadly. The girl they tested, she had a demon put inside her to see if she could resist. And she couldn't. We had to end it quickly. I have to say I didn't have much interest in becoming a Templar after that.
That is a harsh lesson to learn. Seems like the Templars could run the Chantry.
You'd think that, but it's not so. The Chantry keeps a close rein on its Templars. We are given lyrium to help develop our magical talents, you see. Which means we become addicted.
And guess who controls the flow of lyrium?
The Chantry controls the lyrium trade with the dwarves.
Correct.
Well, I'm sure you can put two and two together.
Indeed. You give them their fix, and then, keep them in line with that. That's horrible. I can't believe they would do that.
Well, they do it, and they feel perfectly justified. You don't need lyrium in order to learn the Templar talents. Lyrium just makes Templar's talents more effective. Or so I was told. Maybe it doesn't even do that. The Chantry usually doesn't let their Templars get away either, so they can spread their secrets.
I bet.
I'm a bit of an exception. Lucky me.
I imagine that's why she was very upset when Duncan recruited you.
Something on your mind?
Go ahead and talk to Alistair again. I have some questions.
Of course.
Can you teach others to be a Templar?
Others, yes. But not yourself. I need someone who's trained first as a warrior.
Of course.
It's as much about discipline as anything. I guess if I'm going to give up Chantry secrets, I may as well go all the way. Send whoever you want trained to me in camp, and I'll see what I can do.
And any warrior we get in future will have the Templar ability. We have the specialization unlocked now, and that means we get a codex to read on Templars next time around. We'll talk to Alistair again.
Something on your mind?
I have some questions.
Of course.
Love the camp music in the background here. If you were raised in the Chantry, have you never...
Never what? Had a good pair of shoes?
You know what I mean.
I'm not sure I do. Have I never seen a basilisk? Ate jellied ham? Have I never licked a lamppost in winter?
You see, jellied ham sounds disgusting, so we're gonna cut to the chase. I mean sex.
Oh, so that's what we're talking about. Well, if you really want to know, you tell me first.
I mean, we could die here, Alistair. If you haven't, we're gonna have to take you to the Pearl and dinner, and we can't have you dying a virgin. Many, many times. I mean, I'm out of noble birth, right? You had sweet Iona at the start of the game.
And apparently you have no shame as well. Well, all right, I'll play along. I myself never had the pleasure. Not that I haven't thought about it, of course. But, you know.
You've never had the opportunity? I like how we can throw shade at him here and say, oh, I see. You like the proper parts. No, we're gonna go with you've never had the opportunity.
Well, living in the Chantry is it's not exactly a life for rambunctious boys. They raised me to be a gentleman. That's not so bad, is it?
Not really, no.
I've no urge to rush into anything. We may not even survive what is to come, after all. Enough. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Let's go.
That's a healthy mindset, Alistair. I think we'll be good on that with Alistair for now. Let's talk to Leliana. We haven't had much time to talk to her. We'll probably take her out in the party soon. At some point, at least.
Yes?
I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
Here you are. What would someone like you be doing in Lothering's Chantry?
What is meant by someone like me?
They don't teach you how to fight in the cloister, do they?
Did you think I was always a cloistered sister? The Chantry provides succor and safe harbor to all who seek it. I chose to stay and become affirmed.
Affirmed?
We affirm our belief in the Maker, in Andraste and the Chant, but other than that, there are no vows taken.
What did you do before that?
I was a traveling minstrel in Orlais. Tales and songs were my life. I performed, and they rewarded me with applause and coin. And my skill in battle? Well, you pick up different skills when you travel, yes? Yes, of course. Let's move on.
Interesting. She seems very eager to avoid conversation about that. I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
You were a traveling minstrel. Do you have tales to share?
Of course I do. I love stories far too much to keep them to myself. Everyone should be able to benefit from them, I think.
I would agree. Tell me about Darkspawn.
Chantry law says it is man's pride that created the Darkspawn. In ages past, the mages of the Tevinder Imperium ruled much of the world we know. In their pride, they thought their magics invincible and imagined that they were greater than the Maker himself. So thinking, they invaded his golden city, planning to take it for themselves and depose their own creator. But they were impure and full of sin. And it is with the sin that they tainted the golden city, corrupting it forever. The Maker cursed them and cast them from his sight. Wherever they went, they spread the taint of their sin. Any land that was touched by the taint became blighted and would suffer no life. Instead, the Darkspawn arose to torment us and remind us of our hubris.
I love the way they tell stories in this game, especially with the camp soundtrack in the background. It just sets the scene for a great story time, and Leliana is a very talented storyteller. Know any stories from Orlais?
Of course, Orlesians enjoy telling stories. I shall tell you my favorite tale of Aveline, the Knight of Orlais.
That sounds interesting.
A long time ago, a girl child was born to a farmer. He had hoped for a son, not a daughter, and so he told his wife to abandon the child in the woods. Before the cold could claim her, the baby was found by a tribe of Dalish elves who took pity on the poor mewling thing and raised her as their own. Aveline, for that is what they called her, grew strong and quick and clever under the guidance of the elves. She learned to wield the sword as well as any man, could kill a deer with an arrow at 100 paces, and was as graceful on the back of a horse as she was on foot.
Continue, please.
Aveline's Dalish guardians saw that she could easily best any Orlesian chevalier in battle, and wanted to show the cruel humans the child they had left to die. They bestowed upon her a fine horse and armor, and sent her to prove herself to her people in the grand tourney. Now in those days, no woman was allowed to take up arms, let alone compete in the grand tourney, but Aveline kept her helmet on and was not discovered.
Did she win the tourney?
Aveline won many events and gained the approval of the adoring crowd. Eventually, she came face to face with the knight Kaleva in the grand melee. Aveline had already bested him in the joust, and Kaleva was determined not to lose a second time. Out of desperation to regain his honor, Kaleva tripped Aveline and tossed her to the ground, ripping off her helmet as he did so. Silence fell upon the arena as Aveline was revealed. Kaleva declared the previous competitions invalid. A woman had taken part, and this was not allowed. But the crowd cheered for Aveline. Kaleva was furious, for he had lost to a woman and was now being shamed. Blinded by his rage, he forced Aveline to her knees. "Know your place, woman," cried he, and slit her throat.
That is not how I expected this story to go. I was hoping for a happy ending.
The son of the king, Prince Freyan, was present. He recognized Aveline's skill and bravery and began to see the injustice done to the women in his land. When he was made king, He rewrote the laws of Olay so that women could also become chevalier. He honored Aveline and knighted her after her death. And to this day, any female who is knighted reveres Aveline the Brave, for she is the patron of all women chevalier.
Somewhat of a happy ending. She became a patron saint. A bad tale of pride there. The dude lost his marbles basically because he couldn't hold the L. Slit her throat. Do you know any Ferelden legends?
I know one, told to me by my mother a long time ago. It always chilled me to the bone. Maybe you have heard of Flemeth?
Flemeth? Morrigan's mother was called Flemeth.
Are you sure? Was she the Flemeth of legend? Flemeth, the devourer of men? Flemeth, mother of witches? Flemeth, demon-touched, who dwells in the mists?
She didn't really introduce herself as such.
Ferelden mothers scare their daughters with talk of Flemeth. They say that if you're bad, Flemeth will spirit you away and bind you to her forever. They also say that Flemeth mourns her lost beauty and will steal yours through your looking glass if she catches you.
Tell me the whole story.
Flemeth's beauty was known throughout the land. She had hair like unto a moonless night, skin as pale as winter's first snow, and eyes as beautiful and perilous as the sea. When she came of age, she came to the attention of the Lord of Highever, Conobar, and he took her for his wife. Conobar soon learned that his young bride had the gift of magic. He kept this a secret, for he feared that she would be taken from him. Flemeth stayed with Conobar for some years, and with his blessing, she practiced her art. And then one day, a young poet named Osen came to the castle. Flemeth was captivated by Osen's voice, and he by her beauty, and they fell in love.
This is a slightly more in-depth version of the codex we read about this. What happened then?
Flemeth longed to be with her true love, and she and Osen fled from Conobar's lands, seeking refuge in the Kokari wilds with the Chasing tribes. They lived there happily for many a year, till the day Flemeth received news that Conobar was dying and longed to see her face one last time. Flemeth's heart swelled with pity for the man who once was her husband, and begged Osen to return to Conobar's side with her. But when Flemeth and Osen entered Highever, they were captured by Conobar's men, and Osen was slain in front of Flemeth's eyes. Flemeth was imprisoned in the highest tower of the castle, there to await Conobar's judgment on her. Distraught at the loss of her love, Flemeth plotted revenge against her husband. She summoned a fey demon, intending for it to wreak vengeance on Conobar. But a spell went awry. The demon possessed Flemeth. Turning her into an abomination, the halls of the castle ran red with blood as Flemeth slaughtered Conobar and all his men. The last of Flemeth's humanity melted away, and at dawn, she stole back to the wilds to plot and scheme for 100 years. They say she took to her side many Chasing men, and with their help, begat her daughter witches, who even now prowl the dark places of the Kokari wilds.
And that is where the line of Flemeth's daughters in the whole Witch of the Wilds things come from. Although some of that tale can't be true, Flemeth certainly didn't seem like a crazed abomination. The closest thing to that we've seen so far was Uldred, and he clearly didn't have his shit together. Flemeth, at least, seems to have retained her humanity, whatever is inside her, if there's even any truth to that. There was another story I wanted to hear.
Which one?
Do you know anything about the Dalish?
I have heard a little about how the elves gained their freedom from the Tevinter Imperium. When Andraste began her exalted march against the Imperium, the elves joined her cause to fight their masters. The great elven leader, Shatan, born in captivity, rose up to lead his people. He foresaw a future where the elves were free. Shatan was killed when Andraste was betrayed, but the elves continued to fight, eventually breaking free of the Imperium. The elves claimed the Dales in the south and settled there in the land of their own.
Now, for anybody who's watched a lot of my videos, you all know that I am probably not a big fan of Tevinter, given my penchant for murdering slavers. Slavers I have a real big problem with, and Tevinter is basically founded upon that, so I'm not a fan of the Imperium. It didn't last.
The elves lived in the Dells for centuries. They resurrected the worship of the elven gods and would allow the building of no chantry. This angered the chantry, and the hostility between the two factions finally broke out in open war. The chantry says the elves struck first, but I do not know whether to believe it. The chantry declared a wholly exalted march against the elves, named for Andraste's similar march against Tevinter. During the exalted march of the Dales, the elven cities were sacked, and the elven state completely dissolved. Some of the elves bitterly accepted their fates and surrendered to human rule, living in the human cities as second-class citizens. But others, still fiercely proud of their heritage, refused to bow to the humans, and instead became homeless wanderers. They were the elves of the Dales, the Dalish.
We'll learn more about the Dalish as we go. However, we know there's a lot of truth to what she's telling us here in the tale, at least of the city elves. They do live in the slums as second-class citizens. It is really unfortunate what became of the elven population after that exalted march. And just as I scorned Olay for what they did to Ferelden, I will also scorn Ferelden for what they did to the elves. What do you know about Andraste?
Andraste was the Maker's chosen. The Maker had long since abandoned the world when the sound of her singing turned his ear. Beauty, grace, and wisdom enraptured him, and he offered to take her from this flawed world to become his divine bride. But Andraste had an earthly husband and would not forsake him. Instead, she beseeched the Maker to return to his people once more. So earnest was her plea that the Maker was moved, and promised that he would create a paradise on earth if all abandoned their false gods and turned once more to him. And this is why Andraste began her exalted march on the idolaters of the Tevinter Imperium. The Maker granted her his powers with which to smite her enemies. Andraste brought the Imperium to its knees, and her victories converted many to the worship of the Maker.
How did Andraste die?
Alas, it was the frailties of men that betrayed and killed Andraste. Her earthly husband, Maferath, a chieftain of the Alamari tribes himself, grew jealous as his wife's popularity and influence overshadowed his own. She was also revered as the Maker's betrothed, and Maferath began to see their own bond waning in significance as Andraste became ever more devoted to the Maker. Out of envy and spite, Maferath made a pact with the Archon Hissarian of Tevinter, allowing his beloved Andraste to be ambushed and captured. Andraste was burned at the stake in Minrathous, the capital of Tevinter.
But Tevinter has a chantry, doesn't it?
The Tevinter chantry claims that in Andraste's last moments, Hissarian's heart softened, and he heard the voice of the Maker telling him to end her suffering. He plunged his sword into her heart, and as her blood washed over his hands, he became one of the faithful. Dissenters said that the Archon only converted because he could not stem the tide of Andraste's cult, and was forced to do so to stay in power. We will never know for sure.
That was a pretty good telling of those tales that she just gave us. It's pretty accurate to the Codex, actually. I believe everything of what she just said was true. Let's move on. And a +5 to Leliana. As for the Dalish, like I said with the All-Legion occupation of Ferelden, I believe everybody has the right to their own religion and gods. If the Dalish wanted to practice their own religion and their own culture and history in the woods, then that should be respected. As long as they aren't breaking into villages and kidnapping anybody to convert them, I think, in general, everybody should be left alone, as long as it's not hurting anybody else. Forceful conversion's not something I'm a fan of. Go ahead and talk to Sten a little.
Yes.
What were you doing in that cage?
Sitting, as you observed.
Do you have to be so literal?
No, it's a choice, not a necessity.
Are you going to answer my question?
I did. Parshera, was there anything else?
Right. I wanted to discuss something you mentioned.
Speak, then.
That's enough for now.
Then I suggest we move on.
I have a question.
I am hardly surprised.
Why did you come to Ferelden?
To answer a question.
What was the question?
The Arishok asked what is the Blight. By his curiosity, I am now here.
What's an Arishok?
The one who commands the Antam, the body of the Kunari.
So he's your king.
Kunari have no kings.
What do you have then?
Little patience for endless questions.
Did you find the answer to his question?
A portion of it.
What was the answer?
Were you not at Ostagar when the army was overwhelmed? That is your answer.
Don't you have to report back then?
Yes.
When are you going to do that?
Never. I cannot go home.
Why not?
It doesn't matter now. Can we move on? We keep the Darkspawn waiting.
I wanted to discuss something you mentioned.
Speak then.
That's enough for now.
Then I suggest we move on.
We don't quite have the rapport with Sten yet to get going on that.
As you wish.
See, we took a disapproval hit to Sten there. We beat around the bush a little too much. You gotta be careful when you talk to Sten. Let's talk to Wynne. She's new here to the camp.
Oh, it's been a long day. Rest would be welcome.
Are you alright?
Yes, of course. I am just a little weary. As you may have noticed, I'm no spring chicken.
There's still some life in those old bones, I bet.
Thank you. You're very kind to say so. But in all honesty, I do not know how many years I have left in me. I have lived for such a long time, but there is always something else to do. And I have to keep going in order to do it.
Indeed.
I think I will be glad when I am done.
A purpose can keep a person around for a long time. I'm sure you'll be kicking around for years yet.
Oh, I don't know. I really don't.
The +1 with Wynne. We'll go ahead and talk to her one more time.
Have you encountered many abominations, apart from the ones in the Circle Tower?
No, the ones in the tower were the first I've ever seen.
The first time I saw an abomination, my blood turned to ice. It was months before the nightmares stopped. It was the knowledge that I could easily become one of them that frightened me the most.
And that kind of level of self-reflection is the reason why you never will. Seeing the monster that you could be is unsettling, yes.
One slip. All it takes is one slip, and everything you are is simply gone. Replaced by madness. And there is no turning back, or at least that's what they say.
You have doubts?
Of late, I have begun to wonder if there is any way an abomination can be cured. Or if a mage could be so possessed and still retain their sanity, their humanity.
If one retains one's humanity, one is not an abomination.
Yes, it is madness and cruelty that define abominations. If those are lacking, if the mage remembers the person they truly are, then they are not an abomination. I never saw that. Thank you for showing me another way of looking at it.
Take that as a very good compliment. Wynne is very wise. So over here we have Emissary Petha. This is part of the Mage Circle. Now that we did that faction and got them to accept our aid, we can upgrade them.
The Circle of Magi stands ready to assist, Grey Warden, as do the Templars of the Chantry.
Yeah, they sent a Tranquil to our camp. Do you need anything?
There are always areas to improve on, Grey Warden. The most useful for my talents are runes.
Right, so essentially, we go over here to this camp supply cache, turn in runes for the circle. We are going to give them all our novice runes. And we are going to give them all of our journeyman runes. The master runes are ours, we're keeping those for ourselves, but we will give them the journeyman runes. How much you upgrade these factions are going to be very important late game, but not for right now.
Even the Templars will be impressed by the powers you will command.
Indeed, and it will get stronger and stronger as we go. We are not nearly done upgrading them. Last but not least, we can talk to Morrigan a little. She must have some kind of commentary after everything that went down at the circle.
Yes?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Can you teach others to become shape changers?
I cannot teach you, no. But any other mages that cared to learn, yes, I could do that. Send whoever you wish my way, and I shall teach them what I can in the camp, provided they possess the will to even make the attempt.
Alright, now we got that specialization unlocked. Beautiful.
Yes?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Have you ever been hunted by the Chantry?
You are very cute to ask so many questions.
I'm glad you think so.
And I am glad you are so glad. My mother has been hunted from time to time, yes, by Templar fools like Alistair, which should tell you how successful they generally were. Flemeth made a bit of a game of it, in fact. The Templars would come again, and she would look at me and smile and say that the fun was to begin once more.
Alistair catching strays from across the camp. You really had no trouble with them?
I am unsure. I was too young to understand, and perhaps 'twas bravado on Flemeth's part, or perhaps she was merely amused. I will never know. Flemeth would warn them, once. 'Twas a warning they inevitably failed to heed. And then the true game began. Often Flemeth would use me as bait. A little girl to scream and run and lure the Templars deeper into the wilds and to their doom.
Flemeth used you as bait?
'Twas a game, and I a young girl. If I didn't get to play, I would have been very upset. Thankfully, the wilds is a vast place. Once they found us, Flemeth would simply move us elsewhere, and we would be lost within the forest once again. I did not understand the danger we faced until I was much older. I had never heard of apostates or maleficarum.
What exactly is an apostate?
You do not know? The zealots use that word for any magic they do not control. The Chantry sees any mages not leashed to the circle of magi as apostates, and apostates could become maleficarum, evil mages that resort to blood magic and become demon-enslaved abominations. It may even be true, still, those of us who prefer freedom see no reason to submit.
If I were a mage, I might think the same. Of course I'm not, so we'll never know, but I can see why a mage in that position would think that way, whether I think that's correct or not.
Thank you for small favors, then, at the very least. Enough of this talk. Let us return to the task at hand.
Talk to her one more time.
Yes?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Is Flemeth really what she seems to be?
Well, that depends, does it not? What does she seem to be?
A powerful Maleficar?
You mean, is she truly the Flemeth of legend and story? Tell me, how much do you know of the tale? The one that the chastened still tell of my mother, to frighten them into obedience.
I'm more interested in the truth.
I can relay what Flemeth once told me herself, and you can decide whether or not 'tis the truth, if you desire.
That sounds interesting. We're gonna get the actual story here behind the legend. At least if Flemeth's telling can be trusted.
As the tale is sung by the bards, there was a time when Flemeth was young and beautiful. A fair lass in a land of barbarian men, the desire of any who saw her.
Yes, I've heard this part.
The tales say that Flemeth fell in love with Osen the bard, and fled the castle of her husband, the Dreadlord Conabar, and that he swore vengeance for her infidelity. In truth, my mother claims that 'twas Osen who was her husband, and Conabar the jealous lord who looked on from afar. Lord Conabar approached young Osen and offered him wealth and power in exchange for his lovely wife, and Osen agreed.
Interesting. So I guess this is kind of a to the victor goes the spoils kind of situation. They rewrote history there. He sold his wife to another man.
The life of a bard is a poor one, and love fades in the wake of hunger. 'Twas Flemeth who suggested the arrangement. All would have been well had Lord Conabar kept his end of the bargain. But he was a foul man who bargained with coin he did not possess. Osen was led off to a field and slain, left for dead. Flemeth spoke to the spirits and learned of the deed, and swore revenge.
She spoke to spirits or demons?
Spirits first, and 'twas they who slew Conabar. Flemeth did not turn to the demon until much later. Lord Conabar's allies chased Flemeth, you see. Chased her to the wilds, and there she hid. There she found the demon, and he made her strong. The legends all speak of the great hero Cormac, he who defeated Flemeth and her great army when she invaded the lowlands centuries later. All lies.
Which she never invaded, or he never defeated her?
The truth of the matter is that there was never an invasion. As Flemeth tells it, the Chastened never raised an army under her banner, and she never fought with any warrior named Cormac. Cormac led a brutal civil war against his own people, and later claimed it was to vanquish evil that had taken root amongst the lords. Thus, he was hailed a hero. Flemeth was only attached to the legend much later. Perhaps 'twas due to the great war with the Chastened that eventually came, but Mother claims not to know how it began.
Right, so they rewrote a little bit of history there so that Cormac could justify his slaughtering of the ruling lords to take control, at least if Flemeth is to be believed. How is it that Flemeth has survived for so long?
The demon within her has transformed her into something else. An abomination, perhaps some would say. I know not. I only know my mother is clever, and she is part of the wilds as it is part of her. But she is no immortal. She bleeds. A blade in her heart would kill her like any other, were it lucky enough to find her.
The legend tells of Flemeth having many daughters.
You ask if I have sisters. I have asked of this myself. The stories tell of many witches of the wilds after all, not just the one. And these tales existed long before I did. Flemeth refuses to speak of other daughters, if they existed. So, should I believe I am her first? I doubt that too.
Why would she refuse to speak of them?
The Chastened tell of a falling out between Flemeth and her daughters. They say that one day she hunted them all through the wilds and ate their hearts. It may be true. I have never seen another witch or heard of one. Perhaps one day Flemeth will eat my heart as well.
Do you believe her version?
I do not believe everything that Flemeth claims. Oft it seems her bitterness has colored her memories. But on the whole, yes, I believe this tale, if not all.
An interesting story, thank you.
Flemeth tells it with far more embellishment than I, but you are welcome. Dare I ask of your own mother? Few are abominations of legend, 'tis true, but I find myself curious nevertheless.
My mother died, recently in fact.
Ah, then you have my sympathies for what it is worth. Which is very little, I am certain. It matters not. Let us move on.
Little crack in the armor there from Morrigan. You see, she almost felt an emotion. Right, I do want to talk to Sten. I would like to get some information from him. So, what we are going to do here is look at our gifts. We got to clean up the inventory space anyway. You see, we're still 62 deep. What would you like, Sten? Perhaps you'd be interested in a tribal necklace.
Unexpected. Thank you.
Not so much. I do not think you would be interested in anything chantry related. I'm not going to give you the alcohol. We'll give this to Morrigan at some point. Not yet. Water-stained portrait. You know, oftentimes a lot of stoic people do like art. Would you like a portrait, Sten?
Unexpected. Thank
He
you.
would. He did like the portrait. Okay, now we got a +8 from Sten. I still don't think that'll be enough, but we'll go ahead and check.
Yes.
have a question.
I am hardly surprised.
Actually, never mind.
Very well.
I want to discuss something you mentioned.
Speak then.
We cannot ask
Then I
yet.
suggest we move on.
As you wish, Sten. Let's go.
As you wish.
We're not going to go too hard at giving him approval ratings yet. Same with Leliana. I would like to get some more information out of her, but we just don't have the approval to do it yet, so... I think what we'll do, before we wrap up, is get Bodahn and Sandal's story.
If there's anything I can do for you, please, please tell me.
We've had the option to dig into them a little for a while, we just didn't do it last time we were in camp. So what's your story exactly?
Well, if you're really interested, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to tell you. I am originally from Orzammar, the famed dwarven city that lies beneath the stately Frostback Mountains. I was a merchant there too, merchant caste. These things are in the blood, you know. You can't just leave them behind. I ran a fairly successful business. Rare artifacts, you know. Old things, grand things. The nobles loved them. Reminded them of the lost glory days, I suppose.
Why did you leave?
One day, a noble woman came to my store. She looked around for a bit and then started shrieking in dismay. Apparently, she believed that a pair of braces I had for sale once belonged to her brother. He'd been lost in a cave-in, you see, while on an expedition to clear out the Darkspawn from one of the tunnels running close to the city. They were made specially for him. They're unique, she shrieked. He stole them from my poor brother's corpse. She had me arrested on the spot, of course. Nobles, they're touchy like that.
And did you steal them?
Well, I didn't steal them. You see, I'd been paying these castless thugs to venture out into the deep roads for me. The lost tigers. They're full of things that people left behind. Sometimes you can find a treasure. Something worth a little gold.
Right, so essentially he's a pawn shop owner. And somebody brought him something they either found on a corpse in the deep roads, or since he paid castless thugs, maybe they murdered that poor lady's son, but ultimately that's not his problem. And the things he is rescuing from the deep roads, I do honestly believe that it is better to do something with them than leave them to rot.
That's exactly how I see it. The noblewoman, she wasn't too happy with the theft of her brother's braces. I don't know what they planned for me, and I didn't want to find out. Bribed the guard that was watching me and took off for the surface first opportunity I got. Never looked back.
And now here you are.
Yes, here I am. Now, is there anything the boy or I can get you?
Speaking of the boy, you didn't mention him much, but first things first, where did these goods come from? Not the deep roads.
Look, we don't rob people, all right? We don't take things from people that need them. The things in the lost tigers, what good did they do lying there? I brought them back to Orzammar, where people could look at them and remember. It's not all that different up here. There are places long abandoned by the humans everywhere. Even more now with the Darkspawn coming.
What do you mean?
People flee from the Blight with good reason, but they forget things. Things with value and meaning. They leave them behind because they're frightened and desperate. And sometimes, my boy and I, we find our way to these places before the Horde descends, and we save these things. I take them away so the Darkspawn don't get them. Is that so bad? They destroy everything they touch.
I suppose it's better than having the Darkspawn take it all.
That's what I tell myself, too. Ah, these are dark times indeed. Dark times, my friend.
Anyways, if it ends up in our inventory, then it is helping defeat the Darkspawn, so I suppose that's the ultimate greater good, right? You didn't mention your son in your tale.
Ah, yes. I'm married to a fine woman back in Denerim, it's true. She'd give me a son if she could, but that's not likely to ever be. Sandal here. I found him in the deep roads years ago. Abandoned, I think, and he was never quite right in the head. I took him in, and I brought him with me when I came here to the surface. He may not be my blood, true, but I think of him as one.
We left Orzammar.
That's right, boy. Maybe one day we'll see it again.
Regardless of them being blood or not, they both seem very happy with each other. They do seem like a family. Blood isn't all that important.
That's how I've always felt. As long as he's happy. So am I. It's not as if I don't benefit, mind you. Turns out the boy's a natural working with enchantments. He might have even been lyrium-addled. I never thought of that before, to be honest. Happens sometimes. He can work an enchantment into just about anything, however, given some time. Could probably open his own shop, if he knew how.
Enchantment.
Enchantment.
Well, he does seem to enjoy it, at least.
Indeed he does. I should go.
Of course. Good fortune to you and yours.
Goodbye.
Alrighty guys, and that is going to be that for this episode. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, leave a like and a comment. If you want to support the cause and help improve the channel, there is a tip link in the description below. Otherwise, stay tuned and I'll see you guys soon with more Dragon Age Origins. Take care guys, have a good day.